From your book, you would write, on the heels of Buried Alive, I came back against The Undertaker in November's Survivor Series in what was probably the biggest disappointment of my career. In front of the Madison Square Garden fans, I was amazingly mediocre. It was a tough one to put behind me, but I vowed to have a strong showing on the following evening's Raw. So, is it, you think you're in your head about having 4 matches on pay-per-view in a 5-month span, or just doing a regular match where you didn't get to communicate with him, or is it okay to have an off day?
No, there's something more playing into it, and I think we touched on this in a previous episode when, I don't know if I specified this night.
I think you told me and Grillo this off air.
Okay, we talked about my hardcore ceremony at the Garden, I think in 2003. Was it 2003? Yeah, 2003. This is where I was saying, you know, at first it was going to be a Hall of Fame induction. And it ended up with Bob Holly and Al Snow, Rob Van Dam, a few of the hardcore. Tommy Dreamer was probably there. I wish I'd thought to have Crash Holly included because it hurt him, but I wasn't excluding anybody. I was just looking at a list I was given and saying, okay, looks good. I was legitimately hurt by the fact that Terry Funk wasn't there, and I exercised that the way you should in a promo 2 years later. That's the way we handle things. But I said that my wife she didn't feel quite comfortable. This was, 99 was when we did 2020, and in an attempt to stick up for the business, she was saying things that, with the help of selective editing, made me look bad. My wife would say, he walks like he's 80 years old, and I would say, but like a sexy 80-year-old. But they kind of strung together her quotes, and they were her quotes, in a way that made me look like I was doing a lot worse than I was. But keep in mind, at that point, my wife and I had been together for 9 years in 99. And she knows the wear and tear I've taken, and the outside, the general public, still thought it was all fake. And she's trying to stick up for me, does it in a way that, with the help of selective editing, leads Vince to say that she, you know, that she was like Robin Givens. And that's where Vince, I got hot about it. I called Vince. He goes, I meant to say to you that you were like Mike Tyson, very empathetic or sympathetic. I said, but that's not what you said. You didn't say I look like Mike Tyson. Said my wife looked like Robin Givens, and that was a sticking point. Vince called my wife. He apologized to her, but she didn't feel completely comfortable, and that actually stems back to July of '96 when I brought my kids on the road, I think for the second time. In fairness to WWE, when I brought them to Savannah, Georgia, my kids had they cried for 90 minutes. You know, I had to talk with them outside. They're all dressed up. Dewey's in a little tie. Noelle's in her dress. So you're going to be good for Daddy in there, right? You're going to be good. They went in there and had the fit where the mucus is coming out of the nose and you just can't stop it. But nonetheless, that had been a few weeks earlier, and now I'm bringing them to New England. And I can't remember if they were in Portland with me, but they were definitely there the next night in Bangor. And the agent, and I don't need to name the agent, may have been overplaying his hand by not allowing my family backstage, and ushered them into a bathroom with what appeared to be an open sewage line. And why I didn't stand up right then and say this doesn't fly, I don't know. I was probably thinking I've only got a few months in this company. I'm getting a push. I don't want to rock the boat. That's one thing to do that to me in July. But by November, kind of a big deal. I'm working my 4th pay-per-view with The Undertaker, and there's an edict, no wives backstage. Okay, so my wife is celebrating her birthday. We take a trip together to New York to celebrate. She's by herself. She's going to be going to the show by herself. The edict comes down, no wives. I appeal. You can ask Jim Ross, because Jim, I think, believed in the no wives backstage.
I don't want to cut you off. I want to ask, how does the edict come out? Do they post something at the house shows?
I cannot remember. Okay. I cannot remember, but
you knew before you showed up that was the rule.
I was told that was the rule. So now my wife's on her own all day, And when I get to the show,
You're at the building at 1?
I'm
maybe?
at the building at 1. To me, there's no reason why my wife can't be there until 6.
Yeah.
And then find her seat. But that's not the case. So if the edict is being followed by everyone, that's one thing. But if you show up and you see other wives, girlfriends, a companion who'd been met,
Yes.
who had known the wrestler for 24 hours or less,
yes,
that's a problem. And now I see it, right or wrong, as a pattern, and I'm pissed. And so you can say, and you should say, well, you're a professional, you have to put that to the side. But I'm more sensitive than most, right? I think that's safe to say.
Yeah.
And when you get that knot in your stomach, it's a pretty good gauge that something's wrong. I have an opponent I can't talk to. I got the pressure of trying to do my 4th pay-per-view and trying to somehow top what we've done in stipulation matches. But first and foremost, I'm wondering why I'm being disrespected like this. And it was after that I did talk to Vince. And I don't know if I laid bad words, but I was upset. I didn't think it was right. I aired that, and he assured me it would never happen again. And it did not happen again. But by that time, the damage had already been done. So I would take my family on house show loops, but far more often I would take 1 or 2 of the children with me, because my wife never felt completely welcomed backstage. And I don't know, I can't prove this, but I do know I have almost a wrestling-free house. There's really nothing there of wrestling. And I just have wondered in the last week, especially in the past few days, does it have something to do with the way we were made to feel as a family, that, one of us wasn't welcomed? And like I said, Vince in '99, he did call my wife to apologize specifically. And I credit him for that. He did say, Mick, you have my word, that won't happen again. And he was true to that word. But it just felt like it felt like I was being singled out and picked on because I was the new guy. And I think the edict that there were no wives was selectively enforced, and that really bothered me.
You know the movie Goodfellas?
Yes.
In the movie Goodfellas, they talk about, at the Copa, I think it was,
your wife and your girlfriend.
Friday nights are for the wives, Saturday nights are for the girlfriends, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Do you think the edict of no wives was because there were going to be girlfriends there? Or do you remember specifically for sure this was a wife? Because I could see how, if there's a guy, listen, this is not really a secret. There were guys who sort of lived double lives. They had their home life and they had the road life. And they lived like a rock star.
Well, in this case, it was two guys with girlfriends. And that's great. They should have been allowed in there. I will even argue, and I have nothing against the guy who with the casual relationship was not married. So that was not the concern there. I remember JR like ushering his wife out and saying, okay, no more, okay, wives have to leave, because he was good with that, I guess, that edict that you don't bring.
He's trying to toe the line.
Yeah, toe the line. But like I said, it seemed to be selectively enforced. And look, we try to bring people back to that moment on this show, right?
Yes, yes.
And I think people can see that I'm not just phoning it in. I'm trying to take people on a ride back there. And I did thought to myself, should I bring this up? And I was like, if I don't do it, I'm not doing justice to the show and how I felt. And if I was good enough, I could have put it behind me, gone out there and done business. And the truth is, I saw a few minutes of the match. I've never watched the match back because it brings up bad feelings. Same way I've never watched a match that I called as an announcer, because that was a period of time I'd rather not revisit. So many of the moments we cover bring back amazing feelings of joy. And it's okay to have an occasional heartbreak and a match didn't work out like you'd hoped. I'm fine with discussing those. But when it's a general feeling of anger and disappointment, those are things that I don't like to go back and relive.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing 2 or 3 minutes of that match with Undertaker and thinking, that actually looks pretty good. I'd be interested to hear what kind of stars it got. I don't think it would have yielded more than 2.5.
2.25.
2.25. Okay.
You nailed it.
Okay.
Um,
It's hard. It's hard, and when I say in today's day and age, I'm saying monthly pay-per-views. I'd say the modern era. Like when I describe Shawn Michaels as the greatest wrestler of the modern era, I describe the modern era as the era of monthly pay-per-views.
yes.
So even though out of necessity, it's really difficult to call a match in the ring these days because of the number of cool moves. But on a pay-per-view, you kind of need to have some time with your opponent. You know, you can call a match in the ring and do okay, and that's great on house shows. But on a pay-per-view, especially when you're trying to top what you did 3 other times on 4 or 5 TV matches, we would have been better served by having some communication, which just wasn't possible because he was up in the rafters most of the day.